Good morning, my YouTube gang. Welcome back. As always, I'm Dan at Tring Shoe Repair and Key Shop. Today I've got a cool little video for you. We've got these 20-year-old desert boots in for a big restoration. Just keep watching, see what it's all about. So once again, welcome back guys, hope you're well. Let me know in the comments what you're up to. I'm interested to hear what you're doing in other parts of the world. But for now, let's talk about the job. So as I said, we've got these 20-year-old pair of desert boots it's a mail order job for one of my good customers, Z. And the reason he wants to get these done is for sentimental reasons, really. He's had them 20 years, may as well keep them going, is what he wants to say. What we're doing is a full Vibram sole, upgrading to a leather midsole for added comfort. But what I wanted to show you, because I haven't done a video on this channel yet about it, is we've got a padded collar on these boots, and as you can see, they're absolutely shot. So we're going to replace and make a new padded collar. At the back there, if you can see, it's all crinkled, like a crinkled chip. That's because the structure inside, the heel counter, is all collapsed, so we need to replace the heel counter. Also, the lining inside is all torn to pieces, so we need to put a new lining in. So we've got some stitching we need to tidy up as well, and we're going to recondition the uppers. So not gonna lie, we've got our work cut out for us on this one, so let's get busy. All right folks, welcome back once again to the work area. Now, first thing I want to do is work at removing the old padded collar. So it's just stitched in, so we're just going to work at cutting through these old stitches, and then it should release nicely. There's probably a bit of glue on here as well, but it's so old the glue's basically turned to dust. Actually haven't had one of these jobs to do for quite a while, so it's quite fun when they come back in. Okay, now when we get to this area at the top of the collar, there's stitching that we need to just release the uppers and the inner lining of the boot so that we can get the collar out, but it's all going back together, so we have to just slice it apart nice and neatly, ready for when we come to stitch it back. There's a few lines of stitching here, so they go a little deep, so we need to release those so the collar will come out. And there he is, one beat up old collar. I figured you guys might want to see what's inside the old collar if we take it apart. Look, I mean, honeycomb, is that? I wonder if it tastes like honeycomb. Okay, next what I'm going to do is just whip out the laces so it's easier to work on, but also we need to take out the insole and the footbed, because we are putting a whole new lining in there and the heel counter. We need to be able to get to everything. So not sure how easy I can show you this, but there's our insole. Just pop it there for you, shall I? Oh no, sorry, there's two insoles. These are more of an orthotic, I think the customer had in, and we've got the main original insole. Now we'll just investigate the footbed. Seems to be one piece, so we'll just see if we can peel it up. Some footbeds are stitched on. We're lucky in this instance that it's just glued right onto the uppers and then the sole unit underneath, so we can just lever it up relatively easily. We just need to be careful that we don't pull any of the uppers away from the original unit, so we want it to stay in place. Okay, so there's our first half that we're going to keep aside, and the second half is flexible enough that we can just fold it away for a minute. I'm going to come back to it later with the tongue tucked in there as well. The amount of people in my last video that said fakest coffee drink ever. Real coffee, real drinking. Anyway, now moving on. We've got to address the lining, so we're replacing it. If I can show you, you can't see too well, there's a big old hole there, so excuse the dye on my fingernails. So we're going to cut a section of the lining away, but we're going to leave this lot here, so the lining has to be set back from that. Now, do you remember I said about the heel counter that's collapsed, the thing that gives it structure? We can just get it out. There we go. Completely, it's missing places, disintegrated. It's fiberboard, but it's too old. Seen better days, it's falling to bits. So, the next thing we're going to do is make our new structural support after we get these bits of fluff out. Right, now we've got our replacement counter here. Now what you'll see is that it scoops around at the bottom, and that's because it's going to sit underneath the footbed, so it's all anchored in place nicely. So we're just going to pop a dab of glue on it, and we can secure it in place in the shoe. All right, cool, so now he's nice and sticky. We can get him in place. All right, so our counter is in place. Now what I'm gonna do is just run a line of stitching down the back, just to really anchor it in place, and then we can move on. Okay people, it's time to step it up a gear. We need to work it, taking the sole off. Now you might see there's some imaginary screws there, but unfortunately this is one solid thick piece of rubber, so there's no cutting apart or pulling apart like you might have seen me do before. We just need to head over to the machine. There's nothing to it but to just grind it away slowly. Now we're replacing it with this lovely honey coloured Vibram unit, but still it's going to take a bit of elbow grease, but not to worry. I have my elbow grease to hand. So all greased up, it's business time. Okay, rock and roll. So we've got our sole down to its bare bones. You can see these little gaps right here, that's fine. We've got the same on the new unit we're putting on. A number of reasons for that. One of them is weight reduction. But what we're on to now is adding our leather midsole. So this is just a thin strip of leather. It's not as thick as a proper sole, but we're still going to get a nice element of comfort from it. So it's going to go on there and be stitched on. However, what we need to do to this first is prime it. So we've got our magic primer, our special Renier. Now the trick to superb priming is to apply your primer to hot material, and that really lets the chemicals bond together like they're best friends that just don't want to be parted. Like my rubber band ball. I've never had a rubber band ball before. I've just started it last week. I want to see how big I can get it. Okay, so we're just going to let our primer develop for about 10 minutes and then add some glue. Right, we're back, it's cured, so now we can start applying our glue. Okay, you know the drill by now guys, let it dry for a bit, heat it up, stick it together. Okay, so now we're just going to put our midsole in place. You've lost that loving feeling. Whoa, that loving feeling. You've lost that loving feeling, now it's gone. Gone, gone. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ba-dum, 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 bum, bum. Come on, everyone, sing with me. Ba-dum, 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 bum. All right, so our midsole's on. It's all nicely sanded to shape. Now what we want to do now is stitch the midsole on. Now the way we'll do this is it'll be a Blake stitch. Now a Blake stitch is where the thread goes through the outside of the shoe up through the inside, separately to a outsole stitch where you'll see me stitching it to the welt on the outside. So normally for this we'd head over to our shop in Leighton Buzzard to use the Blake stitcher because that's where it lives, but due to the whole lockdown business, trying not to travel so much, so we're going to hand Blake it. So let me show you how we do that. Alright, so with our hand Blake, what we're doing is taking our hand awl we've got here and we're using waxed thread, and the wax is so that when you pull it tight it sticks together. So what we do is we just head in from the outside of the shoe with our awl, get into the middle, then once he's in there, I mean you can't see it but we're hooking the thread out, and once it comes out, if it wants to, we've got a little loop. You can see that? There he is, there's our little loop. Alright, and the new thread, outside thread, rabbit goes through the hole and we pull him tight. Okay, you can see I've done a few stitches there, so head all the way around. Now one thing I will say is when you're doing this, it really makes you appreciate machines. Because it's going to take yet more elbow grease and a bit of time, but I'm not going to make you sit here and watch the whole thing. Cue motivational montage. Okay, cool. So once we've just stitched around, leave this section here because we're going to last tack it in a bit just to hold the lining in place when we put it in. But we're going to hammer down the stitches. Sometimes if you forget to hammer the stitches, you come to glue it and there'll be lumps and bumps, which is a bit not quite cricket. Yeehaw! Right, so the next order of business is to get our new lining in. So we're using this lovely bit of calfskin leather. Once it's in, then we can put the footbed down and tack it all together. So just gonna get some glue all over it. Now we want it all over here because when we're gluing it to the inside of the shoe, we need to be able to press it flat to the inside of the uppers in every spot, so there's no bubbles, gaps, you know, sort of protruding bubbly bits, so that can cause issues down the road. So now the lining's in, we're going to stitch the top part of it later when we put the collar in. The footbed is pressed back down. What we're going to do now is last tack through this section of the midsole, and that's just going to secure everything in place. Now, you know, if any of you are panicking right now thinking, you know, oh my God, he's putting nails through, it's going to stab his feet. Don't worry. What happens is these are quite soft nails anyway, and once they go through, they hit the metal last underneath and they flatten down, they squash down, which is called cinching over. So, not to worry. You could wear these barefoot and you wouldn't feel them anyway, but of course we've got the insole to go on top after this anyway. Right, so now we're up to making our padded collar that goes around the back and gives it that distinctive look. So let's get to it. Right, so now for the arts and crafts bit, making our collar. So I've just got this is just faux leather, but it's going to look quite nice for the collar. And we've got a nice thick piece of lamb's wool lining cut to size already. So I've just drawn a template of what we need for our collar. So I'm just going to cut this out. So now what we're going to do is just apply some adhesive so we can get our liner in place. Okay, so the next order of business is to get our collar into the boot. So what I'm going to do is just run a line of stitching around the collar to make it nice and tight, ready for when we stitch it into the boot. Then put some glue on the collar and the boot, glue it in, and run stitches around to attach it to the boot. Alright, lovely. So there's our collar in, lining, the footbed back down. If it looks a little wide, it's because it's new, springy. It's going to tighten up just so he pulls the laces in. So now we can move on to getting our unit on. So everything's put back together, our midsole hand blaked on and last tacked in place, and we've got our unit, which is, you've seen before, this is the rockier Vibram in a nice honey colour. So we need to get our cement on it, and then we're on the home stretch. I'm going to put a double coat on the leather midsole because it's absorbent. I've already got, oh, a bit of mess on it, one coat on this unit. So we've got two coats on two sides. So it's double action. So there's no way this is coming unstuck. Sticky. Now, because I left our sole in the flash lamp just a little bit too long, it's about as hot as the surface of the sun, but that just means it's going to stick really well. Yeah, I've not burned my fingers at all. There we go. And now, of course, as usual, we're going to squeeze it on with a press. Alright, so now all our bottom work is done and the sole's on. There's obviously excess, we need to trim off the excess, but we're done with working with the insides of the boot, so we can get his insole. Just pop the insole back in there. Let's move on. Now what I'm doing here is just finishing off the edge with some very fine sandpaper. This is 1500 grit, just because on our leather midsole, you can see there's a couple of small scorched marks. Sometimes the leather likes to scorch even when you put a new band on it. So we just go around with this, that takes those marks out, and it just gives the edge a really smooth finish anyway. So to clean these up, it's a little hard to know what to do, so I've had to think about it. They're nubuck, but because they're so old, it's almost like they have a, like a sedimentary layer of hardened dust. So what I've experimented with is found out is just some regular suede nubuck shampoo, but a very light coating seems to be doing the trick. So we've just got our cleaning sponge and our shampoo. Let's give it a whirl. Okay, so just going to let that dry off, probably for about an hour, and then come back. And while that's just drying, we're just going to pop some new laces in here. And why not? Chuck them in for free. This chap's a good customer. So the last thing we're going to do is try and nourish these old nubuck boots with some nourishing spray. So normally you'd see us using a leather cream to put all the nutrients back in. Can't put cream on nubuck and suede, but luckily we've got a suede and nubuck nourishing spray, and it's the same thing, they've just managed to make it in a spray. So we just pop that on. And again, it's going to soak in, but take a while to dry and lighten back up. But then, we're done. Okay gang, that is the job done. So we've taken these old tired boots, replaced them with a Vibram outsole, leather midsole, new padded collars, new linings, fixed the stability issue at the back with a new heel counter, and tidied up the uppers. Running out of breath. And new laces. So, job done, that is the video. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, hit like, give us a thumbs up, helps other people see this content. If you happen to be new to the channel, welcome. If you're one of my regulars, thanks again, as always, for stopping by. Now, if you've got a mail order job, contact us on the Tring Shoe Repair Facebook page. That's the only place I can reliably get back to you. And once again, thanks for watching, and catch you next time.